That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to the Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
And this is Joe Howie.
And we're back, unfortunately not with a pregame show, as we had promised you last time. That Georgetown game is off the schedule for Saturday. Georgetown has COVID. Xavier also has COVID, and Villanova still has COVID. So that's 3 of the 11 Big East schools on pause, out of action at the moment. So yeah, we're starting to get into it, and things are getting hairy with the schedule. And I'll start it off. I mean, let's talk about first the position this puts the Friars in before we look big picture. 3 in a row lost. Now you got to travel to Creighton and to Villanova as your next games. How are we feeling at this point? What's changed since Tuesday night?
Ugh. Another very, very tough question to bust open the podcast.
I know it's starting on a low note.
There are, unfortunately, 2 clear-cut avenues that you take here. And depending on how this extra day off with no Georgetown game bodes for the Friars and specifically Jared Bynum, the avenues become more and more clear-cut. So you can either go and win both of these games, which would look fantastic, and it would be 2 huge bounce-back road wins that are resume-building that will push the Providence Friars back into the bubble, into the tournament, and it will bump us over 500 in conference play. I think that would be everyone's ideal option. Or the other one is you lose both games because they're both road games. You're playing the 2 top teams in the league. Creighton's on fire. Villanova just basically had 3 weeks off. I mean, they had COVID, but that's still 3 weeks of no activity. You lose both, and then you're 3-6 in conference play. You've worked your way completely off of the bubble and out of tournament consideration, and you have one hell of a hole to dig yourself out of. Now, you could split the games. I don't know. I feel like splitting the games is going to be tough. It's going to be an all or nothing effort, I think, because if you split, it still looks good, but it also is bad. I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
I think if you get one win here, you're happy. These are 2 teams that, I mean, when healthy, are playing both like top 10 teams. And the last time the Friars got 2 wins against teams like that was 2018 against Xavier and Villanova. And neither of those wins was on the road. They got both of those wins at home. Obviously, the home road split's going to be a little bit different this year. But I think if you manage one win, either at Creighton or at Villanova, you have to walk away very happy with that, especially given the way these teams have played. I do want to take a step back for a second. There's one way that this does help the Friars for sure, and that's with Jared Bynum. I totally said after that last game that he had, I believe, quote, no chance in hell at playing against Xavier or Marquette, even though he was listed as day-to-day. Bynum wasn't going to play in those, and he said he was very questionable for the game that would have been played against Georgetown. So having him get a little bit more rest is good. If you lose that game at home to Georgetown because you don't have Jared Bynum and he's not ready or he's not healthy, then that's a worse outcome than not playing it. And if Jared Bynum tries to play in that one and makes his injury worse, regardless of if you win or lose, that's a worse outcome than not playing it. So there's a little bit of a plus there. This just ramps up the sense of urgency a little bit. You have time off to fix what happened in the losing streak, but it ramps up the sense of urgency. You got to get going now. You got to hit the ground going, and you got to make some noise.
Yeah, I agree. I think this time off is going to be ideal for Jared Bynum specifically, but let's not forget Nate Watson, who tweaked his ankle and still put up a monster performance in the last game. If his ankle is throbbing or if anything's bothering him from that last game, he has plenty of time to ice it, work it off. I think he's fine. Big Papa Watson was tweeting today that his ankle is okay. So
he's been very active.
Yes, that's a very good thing to hear because, quite honestly, if you lose Nate Watson, you basically lose the advantage over both of our next opponents. I mean, we said that about Creighton, but it still is true. We have a center, and Villanova doesn't have a 5. They have 1-3-3-3-3-3. That's how they play. But Nate
Now,
Watson's a piece that you don't want to lose.
and also AJ Reeves. I mean, he basically played that whole game, but he got banged up too. So I mean, you play back-to-back games that close, that are that physical, and that are that emotionally tolling on you. Some off time, that's not the worst case scenario. Now, if we want to look big picture here, one of the things that does worry me is that there's a pretty decent chance this is a cancellation and not a postponement. Georgetown, the Friars really only have two open dates on the schedule. If you want to play this like you play one game in the middle of the week, one game on the weekend, the Friars have two weekend slots open. The last Saturday in February, I believe it's the last Saturday in February, and the first one in March, or it's the last two Saturdays in February. I'm not sure the exact dates here. The Friars have both of those open. Georgetown is not open either of those days. Those are the only openings for Providence. And the last game is the 6th, which the NCAA came out today and said Selection Sunday is still the 7th. So I really have no idea when this game is going to get made up. You might see a lot of changes to the schedule, but if you don't get that home game against Georgetown, that hurts you.
I agree. If we don't get that game, it hurts us. But that's also, we're looking at this through a very fixed lens. That's saying that Georgetown recovers on time and that Providence goes and plays every game as scheduled, and that no one else in the Big East gets COVID. There are no other cancellations. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, this year has been a whirlwind, and if we continue on this track through conference play with teams dropping like flies because of COVID, I can't imagine that those two dates will stay open or that Georgetown's schedule will remain the same. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of moving pieces, and right now, I mean, you and I, we're just doing the best we can to estimate this, logically. I think that's where we're at with this, because right now that's the most logical explanation, but we also have to put a little disclaimer that there's a ton of moving pieces here.
Exactly, and there's really no telling how much emphasis the Big East is going to put on finishing the schedule, or when they're going to try to reschedule some of these games, because for all we know, the Big East is going to come out and say, all right, for some of these teams that we want to hit 20 games, Georgetown, you're going to play 2 games in 3 days, or you're going to play on back-to-back days, because that's the only way we can make this work. They could do that. They could come in and say, all right, you're going to have to play on short rest, or Friars could end up getting COVID for whenever it's rescheduled, or there's a million and one different things that can happen. But for now, that Georgetown game is a very, very big question mark, and assuming that's a win for the Friars, that would be a much needed win. You need the numbers.
That's a game you'd like to have back, especially looking at the position we're in currently, where you need a win, and the next 2 games could potentially put you in a 3-point hole under 500, or 3-game hole under 500. An extra home win against a favorable opponent is something that you'd like to have in your pocket. Like, I mean, it's self-explanatory, really, but you don't want to lose a home game against a team like that.
No, definitely not. And I think if it opens up the other scenario, we're looking forward. The Friars do still play that road game at Georgetown. Georgetown's not good, but a road game in the Big East is no sure thing. If you come out and play a stinker against them and somehow lose to Georgetown, now you can't make that up at home. You can't split it. You end up essentially getting swept by a team that is outside the top 100 on KenPom right now. And that's a really tough thing to have on your resume. If you do that, if that's what happens, you have to have 2 wins against Creighton and Villanova. You have to beat each of them if you can, or sweep Villanova. That's the only way you're going to balance that out.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to sweep Villanova. That would be great.
Oh, yeah. Ideally, the Friars win every game from here on out, but that is unlikely. Very unlikely.
I don't even know how to respond to that. We're coming off of a 3-game skid, off of 3 of the worst performances we've had. Well, the Xavier performance wasn't necessarily bad, but 2 of the worst performances we've seen this team produce in years, and we're saying we're gonna win every other game.
You know what? I believe in that Ed Cooley magic. It's always an interesting go with him as the head coach with these Friars teams, but they always find something.
Yeah, we always, with the exception of 2018, 2019, we always work something out. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the thing that's been, you know, the thorn in my side is that we're essentially playing without a true point guard, which is probably the biggest source of our ailments right now. I mean, without a floor general, without a conductor, without someone who is going to orchestrate everything for you, we're not very good. I mean, you can say that David Duke can play the point, but it's very hard because you can see him struggling out there to dish the ball, run the offense, get everyone composed while also trying to score himself and make shots for himself. I think when he's off the ball, he gets himself into a better flow, and him and Bynum can switch and do that little combo action.
Hmm.
You like to see that better. And right now, this is no disrespect to him, but Allen Breed just cannot fill that role. I mean, he's a freshman. This is
He's in
he
over
hasn't
his
even
head.
he hasn't even played 20 college games yet. It's okay.
His eyes are just wide open, deer in the headlights out there,
Yeah.
which we've seen time and time again with the point guards. I think when it comes to Friar stuff, between this and the Marquette post game, we've said a lot of the things that we want to say about this team. We do have a little bit of extra time. We could talk some Big East ball. We can talk non-basketball. What are you thinking, Joe?
Let's go non-basketball.
Non-basketball. I know you like to cook some stuff up over there. Have you been chefing anything up recently?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, you're one of the main recipients of my cooking Snapchats. I spent basically the entire summer out on the grill trying different things, grilling different meats and different animals, if you will. But um, no, unfortunately, my for those who don't know, I work in advertising and media, and I work from home. So that basically means that I can work like 12 hours a day, which is fine because I get paid overtime. But I don't really get off of work until 7 or 8 o'clock. By that point, my dad's home from work and he's already started cooking something. But I think in recent memory, it was around November. I got off around 6 one night, which was like a miracle. So I we had ground turkey, and I made this dish. It was ground turkey, shredded cheese, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. I said broccoli already. There's something else in there, but it was really good. It was really good.
Sounds tasty.
It was cheap. It was the only thing is it took like an hour and a half to cook because you have to cook everything separately and then combine it in a dish and put it in the oven, which was a little bit
Yeah.
tedious because 6 to like 7:30 is a long time to wait for dinner. You'd ideally like to prepare it at like 5, but again, it was a really good thing.
That
Tasted
sounds good.
great.
See, that's why I've got a cookbook, and it's got a whole section of just the one pot dinners where you make everything in one pot, so you don't have to do any extra dishes or anything like that. That's my comfort zone. I live in that 20-page section of the cookbook. I've been doing one recently that's like a fettuccine alfredo type dish where cook
Ooh.
you cook fettuccine in minced garlic, milk, and chicken broth, and you just let it basically boil down, and then you add a whole bunch of cheese to it, and it makes it a sauce.
Any chicken or any meat in there?
We've been doing chicken. So you
Nice.
start by um, putting the garlic in butter and cooking it in that, and we just add chicken then and cook the chicken, and then add the pasta and then boil it and do all that. It's really good. Although I've made it probably one too many times now, and I'm starting to get tired of it, unfortunately, as what happens when you cook.
What's
But
what's the one meal that you could eat like time in and time out and never get tired of it?
burgers in general.
Burgers?
See, I have a whole philosophy with burgers. I'm gonna explain real quick. There's like a whole bunch of different flavor profiles that you can get with a burger. So like when I cook for myself, I like to make two burgers. And this is usually what they are. One of them, you're gonna throw cheddar cheese on it. You're gonna throw bacon. You're gonna throw an egg, and you're gonna throw a little bit of salsa, or you
Sounds
can
like
do
the
ketchup.
Highwayman from the Abbey.
It does. It does. At the Abbey, if you want to sponsor us, if somebody from the Abbey is listening to this and they want to sponsor us, please, we'd love
And
that.
for
We're big
anyone that
fans.
doesn't know, The Abbey is like a little craft burger and craft beer joint right off campus. It's the best post-game spot after a Providence game. You go in there, you get a hamburger the size of your head. They crack a fried egg on it. Oh,
So good.
delicious. Chef's kiss.
Fantastic. So yeah, you do the first burger. It's basically bacon, egg, and cheeseburger, and it's fantastic. The salsa gives you just a little bit of kick, and it's the tomato. The second burger, and this is where things get interesting. You're gonna still have your cheddar cheese. You're gonna do lettuce if you have it, tomato, onion.
You're
Barbecue
presenting this
sauce.
vocally as if you're talking about a basketball game. I just have to say, I can't help but notice you presenting this and unpacking your recipe the same way you'd unpack like a Providence stat line.
I speak about everything the exact same way.
Oh my God.
I'm a one-trick pony here. I have one voice. So you're gonna add all that. I think I said bacon in there. If you can put bacon on a burger, you always put bacon on the burger.
If I could put bacon in cereal, I'd put it in there.
Exactly. Then you're gonna have barbecue sauce as the sauce. Then your extra ingredient, sliced jalapeno.
Ooh.
The spice from the jalapeno works perfectly with like the sweet, smoky taste of the barbecue sauce, and it is just fantastic. And that's really the core combination. If you have those two things and cheese, everything else you can kind of add based on what you like. But that combination is just fantastic. I will also say jalapeno and guacamole on a burger is fantastic. I actually had that for dinner about 15 minutes ago.
Nice. I like that. I haven't had dinner yet.
Oh, I must be making you so hungry right now.
Yeah, I'm starting to salivate a little bit here. All right, let's transition off of food because I'm getting too hungry here.
Oh man, yeah, that's cruel. That's
You
cruel
know-
to be talking about it like this.
Well, you know what's cruel, and I'm using this as a transition, and it's gonna be corny, but you know what's cruel is, my dad. When he's preparing dinner, he likes to give, like little pieces of cheese or whatever to our two dogs, Pip and Summer, while they're sitting there, and then 5 minutes later they'll come from the counter over to the table and they'll sit and they'll start whining and begging for food while we're eating dinner, and then he doesn't realize that it's because he gave them counter food, which is what he called it, because it's not table food, it's counter food. So there's a difference. But they start crying, and everyone's like, well, why are they crying? Who fed them from the table? No one fed them from the table. I fed them from the counter. That's cruel.
It's not different for a dog.
No, if the 5 feet doesn't make a difference.
No. Oh man. Yeah, no, I've been there with my dogs. To be fair though, I haven't met a dog that doesn't always want food, no matter what. So,
As long as you will feed it, a dog will eat. I think that's the saying.
it is now.
Something
That's
along the
our motto.
lines of that.
We've been teaching our dog how to catch treats, and in the process, we've learned she's not very smart. Like, dogs are supposed to have this wonderful sense of smell. And like we'll throw a treat to her and she won't catch it. That's fine. That's gonna happen sometimes. What I don't understand is how the treat bounces off of her, lands beneath her feet, and it takes her 5 minutes to find it.
Oh, Guinness. How old is she?
Just over a year.
Yeah, so is Pip.
Yeah, I don't understand. I've never seen that in a dog before. The thing that is funny is you can throw a treat at her at like 100 miles per hour and she'll catch it. She doesn't know how to like adjust her head to catch a treat, but no matter the speed, as long as it's accurate and on wherever her mouth is when you throw it, she will catch it, and it's really funny.
You ever wind up and throw it like a baseball?
Yes,
That must be fun.
and she just catches it.
That must be fun.
It's hilarious.
Oh my God.
I hope everybody at home is enjoying us talk about pets. This is what happens when you have a week off for the Friars unexpectedly.
I'll bet you at this point no one's really listening. Everyone jumped off and we're just talking to ourselves right now.
I would hope not. Hopefully at least
No
one or
Friar
two people
content, no
stick around.
followers.
Say we're building the brand. It's you come for the Friars, but you stay for the burger recipes and the dog stories. That's really what it's about here. This is what we do at the Flex.
I mean, if you're a Friar fan and you don't like burgers and dogs, not meaning hot dogs, dogs like human, like real animal dogs, If you don't like burgers and dogs, then you're not a real Friars fan.
This is true. Speaking of, do they have burgers and hot dogs at the Dunk? I have never gotten concessions at the Dunkin' Donut Center, so I have no idea.
See, I always, and you probably are gonna, you know what I'm gonna say. I always had the press pass, so I could just go underneath and get all the free food under there. I never had to pay for anything.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's a lot of people at home who don't know this. Most places, like 90% of sporting venues, if you're with the media, they cater. They provide you food. So the Dunk pretty much always has really good food. They'll have a whole spread out before the game. I think before our last game, they had chicken and waffles for us,
Yeah,
which
that
was
was a
really
weird
good.
one.
Yeah,
It was good, but it was kind of, I was like, what is this?
that was the second time they had it that season too.
Really?
But yeah, but they'll have that, and then the Dunk at halftime switches
Oh,
over, and you get the I think it's Dunkin' Donuts cookies and brownies, and it is like a mad rush to get back there at halftime to make sure that you get one.
see, for me, because Matt would be on the call for the first half, and I would not, and then I would jump on for halftime. So Matt would have the freedom to go run into the little I guess it's the media room they call it, even though there's like food and stuff in there. Matt would run into the media room. He'd get brownies and cookies, and he'd have to bring them over to me while I'm live doing halftime. So whenever I'd bounce it back over to whoever was my guest host on halftime, I'd lift up my mic and take a bite out of the brownie and try the best that I could to conceal my cheering. Because once halftime's over, I got to go stand in the student section, and
Yeah,
I can't stand there with a brownie. It's gonna get all over the place.
exactly. I don't think we could talk about the media room at the Dunkin' Donut Center without talking about the mysterious pink drink back there too. Most places will have just like a some kind of a vending machine, or they'll have a cooler stocked or something like that, and you'll have soda and water and all that. At the Dunk, there is one medium-sized container of a some kind of pink sports drink with a massive amount of ice, and that's it for the game.
That was it. It was like 95% ice, and let's say for argument's sake, the pink drink was like one of those small pink Gatorades, like the small ones, not like the medium, like the tiny ones. It's like a pitcher, like an above average pitcher, but smaller than a Gatorade cooler size, filled with ice. And then you sprinkle that small, and I'm saying small, like small Gatorade all over the ice, and then that's it. Everyone
Yeah,
gets about like a teaspoon's worth.
yeah, it's the most watered down thing, but it's also not labeled. Like we're calling it the pink drink because I have no idea exactly what the pink liquid is. It has to be a sports drink based on the taste, but that's all I've got for you. And there's no water, there's no soda, and this thing doesn't get refilled. So you'll go in at halftime, and like I would always be thirsty after being on air, and there's just nope, you're out of liquids. You can get coffee probably, but there's
Yeah,
not going
but
to be anything to drink that'll really rehydrate you.
yeah, but the coffee's not really refreshing. It's like I
Exactly.
remember the DePaul game. We jumped off at halftime, and I went in there, and my throat was hurting. I was like, okay, I guess I'll drink the coffee, and it didn't really do anything for me. I spit it out and threw out the cup. I was like, that doesn't help me.
It really doesn't. That's why I would always just bring in my own water bottles. I realized that pretty early on that there's not going to be any kind of refresher to keep my throat fresh. So I just started bringing in my own water at one point, and I kept that up through the end of senior year. That was always my tip back there. But yeah, I mean, I think usually like Madison Square Garden usually has a pretty good spread. Sometimes it's
Oh
free,
yeah, they
sometimes
do.
it isn't.
Well,
Um,
that's the thing I hated. It was when we did the Big East tournaments. It's like the first day everything was free, and that was what? That was
I think
Wednesday,
the day games things are free. The
and then
night
at
games
night
it's not.
you have to pay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then trying to Georgetown had a pretty good spread. We had a noon game there when I went down for that one, so it was all breakfast stuff because they're serving it from like 10 to 11, and
What about the
we went
Barclays?
uh Barclays. I honestly don't know if I ate at that one.
I did.
Oh,
It
I had
was
snack. They had snack. I just remember having like a bunch of pretzels.
no, I think they had lemon chicken.
Okay, I think I ate dinner before and didn't get anything there then.
No, yeah, because in Thomas Zanzarella, another PC broadcaster, him and we had the lemon chicken, and it was good.
Yeah.
I remember
I'm not.
that's when I finally got my PC Media Guide, the laminated one.
Yeah, there you go. And we went to Villanova. The Wells Fargo Center had really good food. That was also a breakfast one, and it was tasty. I think they had like donuts and all kinds of pastries, which was tasty. I think if there's any other notable, URI doesn't. Oh, URI spread is like fine. It's way worse than Providence's. It's probably the worst of any of the places we've talked about.
Well, I mean, that's
It's
it's
not a
very fitting.
surprise.
URI is worse than Providence, so you're gonna
Yeah.
get a worse spread. Come
Yeah.
on.
Their meeting room is smaller. They don't have the pink drink. They do have actual beverages, but other than that, it's worse.
Do they have the halftime brownies?
No. No.
And do they have a team that was competing for a Big East championship potentially last season? I don't think so.
No. So yeah, URI worse than Providence confirmed. They don't treat PC media very well. At least PC student media very well.
URI doesn't treat PC very well, period. I mean, we're going to hear the words Fairleigh Dickinson come from every Rhode Island reporter until 2025. That's when they'll stop talking about it.
Yeah. How we didn't play URI this year. It's a weird year. That's going to happen. Like,
Sorry.
look at the NHL right now. The Bruins are not going to play the Montreal Canadiens. That's like one of the oldest rivalries in all of sports. It's not going to happen this year. Why? It's a weird year. Things happen. Like, adjust.
Yeah, it's get over yourselves.
Yeah. URI is not that important. I will say they have a nice stadium. I will give them credit for that building because it does create a very good atmosphere for basketball. That's about all the credit I give URI.
I'll give them credit for that. When and we're going to go off on a far tangent here, but whenever we would play URI for rugby, it was in this bare, empty field about 500 feet away from the Ryan Center, which is what URI's on-campus basketball arena is called. And I would always think to myself, like in the middle of like a scrum or something, rugby players have random thoughts, like our minds wander. And I would look at that building and I'd think, damn, it would be nice to have an on-campus arena to go to so you don't have to, haul yourself onto the bus down to the dunk. I mean, the dunk is, don't get me wrong, I love the dunk, but some days, like some Saturday morning games when you'd have to get up at 8 to be at the dunk for 10 a.m. for a setup for a noon tip, I was like, man, I wish I could just like walk to the dunk, but you can't because it's in the city.
Yeah,
so that's the only thing I envy about URI.
Yeah, I will say that's one of the things. Speaking of getting to the arena early, people don't realize about the behind the scenes for media. Like we're talking, like when Thomas Zanzarella and I went down to Philly for the game against Villanova last year, and that was a game. It was a noon tip, so we had to be at the arena at 10 because you have to get there, find wherever you are, settle in, connect to the internet, eat, look over your notes, watch all of the pregame stuff that happens, and note anything else. Like for that game, Colin Gillespie was banged up, so you're watching him. Like he's injured. How does he look? Note that down for your broadcast. And then we do a pregame show from there, like a video show that we put up. So there's a whole bunch. So you got to get there at 10. In that case, we had to check out of the hotel before we left. Both of us have to shower, get dressed in suits. I think we probably got coffee before we left the hotel too. So when you back that all up, you're getting up at probably 7 or 8. And this is after, I don't think we got into the hotel until 1 a.m. the night before, because you have to take a train down and then an Uber to the hotel and the whole complicated setup down there, the way they have their sports complex. So there's a lot of time invested behind the scenes that you do not see unless you are part of the media and understand how a lot of that stuff goes.
I've never, well, actually, that's a lie. I have traveled for media. I went to the Barclays Center in Madison Square Garden, but I'm from New York, so that wasn't a very far commute for me. But I will say, to hear what you guys did that morning of the Villanova game, and to think I woke up at 11 and took an Uber to Brad's, which is like a 10-minute walk at best,
Yeah.
and plopped my butt down in a seat next to the projector in the back and sat there for 3 hours to hear what you had to do. I'm like, man, that sucks.
It's a lot. We've done it for Madison Square Garden even. Just you basically, whatever time the game starts, we are probably getting ready for it 3 or 4 hours beforehand.
Well, how many hours of sleep did we get that night? 4? When you slept over before the Garden?
Maybe.
We got like 4 hours of sleep, maybe 3.
This is going back to the 2019 Big East tournament. Friars had a late night game against Butler and the noon game against Villanova the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we got back to your house by like 1 a.m. and we had to get up, I think, at 7. And the Friars won, so we were excited and we were doing game prep and all that. So I don't think we got to sleep until 3, maybe.
We got back to my house. We ate the brownies that you made, and then that's probably, let's say 1:30. We finished eating the brownies. We did 2 hours, a good 2 hours worth of game prep, and then.
Is this when we played 2K with the Friars?
Yeah, and then we played Friar 2K after the game prep.
Oh man, yeah, that's not part of the game prep. That part's just for fun. And
well, at that point,
yeah.
At that point, the juices were flowing. We were all revved up. It was like 3 a.m. We had a sugar rush because we each ate like 10 brownies.
This is like middle school.
It sounds like a 3-year-old sleepover.
College is basically one big long extended sleepover.
Yeah. Well, senior year is different because you get your own room, and I'll even say junior year is different because of the apartment and you have to cook for yourself. But the first 2 years, it's like a big sleepover.
Look at this.
A big hungover sleepover.
Yes. Look at how we're expanding here. We're expanding our portfolio. This is no longer just a basketball podcast. This is a cooking show. This is a dog training advice show. This is a media behind the scenes show, and now it's a college advice show. Well, and as always, it's us saying bad things about URI show as well.
To be fair, each of the topics we've talked about has some sort of tie to basketball. We were talking about cooking. We couldn't help but bring up the Abbey, which is where we would eat after games. We brought up dogs. My dog's name is Pip, named after Lawan Pipkins. And then we're talking about the media and all that. And we wouldn't have even been in media if we didn't go to Providence. So it all gets tied back to the Friars somehow.
I think what you've just proven is that Providence basketball is at the center of the universe.
Undisputed, yeah. Definitely at the center of the universe. Can't disprove it. Smack in the center of the universe. It's all over. It's also plastered all over my walls.
Does that make your room the center of the universe?
I'm not gonna lie, but yes.
Well, I don't think we're gonna top that. I think this is the spot to wrap up.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, if you're still on and listening, thank you for listening to this rambling, incoherent mess of us just going on about everything in our lives. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. If this sparked comments or questions from anybody, please feel free to send us that on Twitter. We'd love to get some audience feedback and interaction on our show. But for now, thank you for listening. Friars don't play until next Wednesday, so we'll get you a pregame show when they go to take on Creighton. It's a road game there, big game. But yeah, thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter.
Quick plug to at Hold That Line, my buddies from home, their podcast. I'm actually gonna hop off of this and record with them, so be sure to tune in to that. I will be sure to retweet it, and the Flex Hoops will retweet it as well, so you guys can listen. I'll be doing a college basketball and Providence basketball, Big East basketball centered segment, so be sure to listen to that. Those guys are a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely go do that. Make sure you're following us on Twitter if you are not already. And once again, thank you for listening.
Go Friars.